Let's talk about China. First of all, I am so tired of the politicians uh, going on and about the dangers of China. Why? Well, how many American companies have set up shop in China and have accepted the conditions that China imposes on foreign companies setting up there? And what are those requirements? Is there a requirement to pass data to China? Because Chinese companies are required, if requested, to pass their data to China. So theoretically, that's happening. And even if it isn't, given that they're on Chinese soil, it would be relatively simple for the Chinese government to go in and steal the technologies that were being used and then duplicate them and sell at a lower price because they've got essentially what amounts to forced labor when compared to here. So, yeah, and that's just one little reason why the politicians should shut up or put up because they're not really doing anything. All these companies moved either recently or a long time ago, and some of them are in bed with China. I mean, Elon Musk is helping them out with some of his robotic stuff, for example, if I remember correctly. So, yeah. But that's not the point of my video. That's just one example of the thing I'm going to say now, which is that China's going to crush America. And I don't mean with military might. China doesn't need to use its military might. Even if China's military might is inferior to America, or even if it's inferior to any other country, it doesn't matter. China has been given all the money it could possibly need between all those companies from America and Europe and other places being situated in China. All of the countries that have given China through tactics that were often used by the European countries in the past, they've been given basically almost unfettered access and control of um, ports in different parts of the world. And the Chinese government is using both legitimate software like TikTok and illegitimate software like malware to collect data on people worldwide. It's got hackers that are funded by the state government. It's got malware groups that are funded by the state government. It's got regular companies that are funded by the state government, and so on and so forth. Not to mention the fact that China, for a long time now, has, I don't know if this is like something that's part of their plan or this is just, the criminals operating independently, but for a long time, China has been identifying markets where they can easily duplicate or make similar products, and then they flood the American and European markets with those products, like antiquities. So I have an uncle who buys and sells antiques of specific kinds, and he informed me that there's a lot of problems with the Chinese creating forgeries of products, and it has gotten to the point where it's extremely difficult without technical equipment to identify which is a forgery and which is real. So the sophistication of the forgeries has gone from something that you could identify by eye to something that you need high quality, very, very expensive equipment. China also is tops in the extraction of many important minerals that it sells to countries around the world. It has almost a stranglehold on certain types of minerals. So In addition to that, China is now digging a massive hole deeper than any hole has ever been made, and they're going to benefit from that. Scientifically, technologically. Yes, they have problems. I've seen the YouTube channels claiming, oh, China's on the brink of collapse. Not exactly. I mean, China's still chugging along, and it's got the money to keep on going and keep on abusing its citizens. So it doesn't matter if there are citizens who are staging mass protests, because China isn't going to change its behavior just because some poor people are unhappy. It's a dictatorship. Why would it? The rich want to stay rich. Just like here, just like in pretty much every country, the rich hold the power. It may be a communist nation, but the communism is only applied to the rank and file people, the mass public. It is not applied to the people with all the money. They get to do things that the others can't do, because it's a hypocritical communist nation. And because it's really hard to run a country if you don't have that happening. So there are so many examples that I can name as to why China is going to crush America, and without military intervention. And we can go on to talk about the food products that are made with plastic, which is still happening to this day in China. Even the Chinese people suffer from it. And how they fabricate simulations of popular products, like, for example, honey. Honey is extremely profitable, and it's very, very easy to fake it by adding, say, corn syrup, or agave syrup, or tapioca syrup, or any of a number of other syrups. And so they may get honey, and then they'll add some syrup to it. Now, scientists figured out how to identify that, and they kept on getting more and more clever in their forgeries of honey. This was all reported on Netflix back in 2019. So the Chinese stepped it up a notch and got it to the point where it required special scientific equipment to identify forged honey. So America's response was to ban honey imports from China. China's response was to set up shell companies in other nations and send that same honey to America, because America was either testing or not allowing Chinese honey, but it wasn't testing from those other countries. China did the same thing with garlic. Not so much that it was faking garlic, but it was taking old garlic, and then they were bleaching the dried skin of the exterior of the garlic bulbs, and that was to make them look very white and thus imply that they were fresh. And they weren't old, but they weren't exactly as fresh as it looked like. Or they would hire, They would use prison labor. And I don't really have an objection to using prison labor. I think that if you're in prison, you should be working, because the taxpayers should not be paying for your free stay in prison. Pleasant or unpleasant, you should be paying for it. Okay? That's my personal belief. Should you be working in unacceptable conditions? Absolutely not. It should be humane. But you should work for your room and board, even if you can't leave. So they use prison labor to remove all the skins from the garlic, and so they can ship it to other countries and sell it as, garlic that's been skinned, or garlic that has been minced. And they have strict quotas for the prisoners, and so on and so forth. That was also revealed on Netflix in 2019. And the list just goes on and on and on. And young people, they don't get it. They don't get why it's risky to have China farming your data through TikTok and other apps. They don't get that maybe a product you buy that was made in China might be collecting data off of your computer. They just like, oh, the price is cheap. I want to buy a graphics card. Well, the cheapest graphics card I can find is from XFX, except for this one really, there are some really poor quality brands, but XFX is generally going to be one of, if not the cheapest. And there are a lot of computer products that are made in China. A lot of fans, for example, are made in China. A lot of everything is made in China. So the kids, they don't get it. They're like, so what if they're collecting data on me? Big deal. I don't care what they know about me. Well, kids don't generally have, and young adults don't have the foresight to realize if you are using your device indiscriminately, you're not being careful about what you say, you're not being careful about what you do, and China gets that information. It can wait till the right moment and use that information to blackmail you, to control you, to extort compliance from you. Kids just don't get it. Even some older people don't get it. I mean, I've talked in my articles and videos about criminals stealing your data, criminals stealing your accounts and stuff, or hacking your accounts, and people have responded, I don't have anything. I've got no money in my bank account. I'm in debt. I live in an apartment. I live in a hovel. Whatever. But that's not the point. They may not be after your money. They may not even be after what pitiful data you might have. They are after access. Because if they can get into your account, they can use it for whatever it's intended for in the way that they want to use it, and it's in your name. So, can they overdraft your bank account? Absolutely. Can they make you look like a complete jerk? Absolutely. Can they forge criminal activity? Yes. Could they make you look like a pedophile? Certainly. Could they steal your identity and buy expensive things like cars in your name, sight unseen? Absolutely. And it happens every day. Not just Chinese, but there are criminals all over the world doing this. They buy a car in your name, and the next thing you know, you're being contacted by a creditor because you're 6 months behind on the payments for a car you didn't order and didn't receive, and then you have to fight to get your name cleared. And in some countries, you go to jail because of what they did, because you can't prove it. And then how do you prove it from jail? You can't. Not very easily, anyways. So let's think about it just in terms of business, okay? If company A produces this AAA wave fan and sells it for $15, and company B sells, let's see, do I have one on over here? Well, after looking through my extensive collection of computer fans, I was unable to find even a single fan that was not marked made in China, made somewhere else, in other words. I did find some fans that were not labeled at all, which suggests that they were from prior, they're old, but I looked at least 24 fans, and nothing. They're all made in China. Now, granted, you probably can't use a fan to spy on a computer very effectively. Although, who knows? Electrical engineers are pretty clever. The point is that so much is made in China, and made at prices far below what other countries can produce them for. There are, if you talk about graphics cards now, there are graphics cards that are made in other countries, like Taiwan. makes. There are some companies in Taiwan. There are some companies in other places as well. Um, but ultimately, in pretty much any industry you choose, you will find products from China sold at lower prices than Americans can sell them for. Sold at lower prices than Europeans can sell them for. So they're undercutting, just like Amazon. Amazon, one of the reasons Amazon is so giant is because it undercuts all of the competitors. It loses money to get more customers by offering better prices, which is not illegal, but it keeps the other companies from taking that risk to try to do what it did. So all China has to do is to continue to flood specialized industries like art and antiquities and stuff like that with forgeries, and food with forgeries, and other industries, and take over, or dominate, I should say, as many industries as it can through lower pricing and better quality. Because what I'm seeing now is Chinese companies are trying to be very competitive by, not all of them, not all, but they tend to try to do what other companies from other countries are not doing. Like, for example, Asus used to be a really, really well-respected name in the computer industry, but in the last few years, they have let slide the quality of their customer and technical support. They've let slide the quality of some of their products, like motherboards, and they have tried to screw over customers. Now, if you deal with a Chinese company, the chances are high that they're going to try hard to maintain you as a customer through satisfying you, because they can afford to do it. It costs them less than companies here. Finally, the biggest single reason that America will get crushed by China is not about China so much as it is about America. America is divided. It is divided by people in power in America and overseas who seek to keep us divided so that they can take advantage of us politically, religiously, financially, and so on. It is divided by greed. It is divided by poor health. It is divided by a false belief that America is the greatest country in the world. We are the savior of all nations and all that other bullshit. Pardon my French or German or whatever language that is from. When in reality, America is an empire, but the borders are defined by America, and you don't see all the other countries that are basically being controlled by America. So America cannot unite. China, through forced cooperation, can do what we cannot. China can build a bridge across a river in a matter of days. Construction companies want to maximize their profits, so it takes them months, at least, to build a bridge. But China can do it in days. China can build many things by bringing in huge quantities of labor and the technology they have at their command, some of which was taken by copying technology from other countries, or stealing it in some cases. And they can do just about anything. Americans can't do that because it's all about competition. It's all about free market, which is, free market is a lie. We don't have free market. We have controlled markets, and there's a good reason for that, but that's not part of my video. Our country is divided in pretty much every sense that you can think of: racial, business, government, whatever you can think of. There are divides, and some of them are very, very deep, and some people take advantage of them. Trump was brilliant at taking advantage of divides, of taking advantage of people who are disgruntled, people who are disenfranchised, people who feel like other groups are getting it better than they are. And he's just one of many, many politicians who do that, and business people. We're constantly being manipulated and pulled in one direction or another. See, China may be divided as well, but the government has the military might and the legal right to force its citizens to do what it wants. They don't have a choice. Now you may think, oh, well, but the soldiers, they can rebel. Well, if they have instituted systems to minimize that risk, say, for example, surveillance through cameras, through phones, computers, and a China-only operating system for computers and phones, facial recognition, and pretty much every other system of surveillance that George Orwell predicted in 1984, the book, not the year. Then each Chinese citizen doesn't know who they can trust. They don't know who's going to turn them in and who's going to help them. It's very risky for them to say or do anything unless there's a mass uprising. And then the soldiers will get called in, and they will, like in Tiananmen Square all those decades ago, kill people to stop the uprising. Because you don't know if the guy next to you is really on your side with his gun, or if he'll shoot you if you try to stop the other soldiers or police. So they can bring to bear thousands, literally thousands. There's a Chinese propaganda channel called Machine Eye. Watch the videos. They demonstrate how they can accomplish this stuff in such record time, and what inspired them, which was actually how America defeated them in one of the battles where there was a struggle over a bridge. So, since America cannot unite because it is being torn apart by business people, the elites, politicians, religious people, people seeking power, racial groups, and so on and so forth. But China can overcome those problems through force, through law, through strategic extermination and imprisonment and torture and all the other human rights violations that make the American human rights violations look pitiful in comparison. And yes, there are many human rights violations in the U.S. So China will never have to lift a gun or shoot a missile. Ever. Because they're doing everything they can to undermine our economy and our government. They're taking over software and hardware companies in the US and in Europe, buying majority shares or significant amounts of shares in lots of companies that you wouldn't even know are being controlled by China now. It's not just TikTok. TikTok's just the tip of the iceberg. Do some research. There are a lot of famous companies that people rely on that are in the pocket of China. So, America will lose because we are divided. We are divided by everybody seeking a piece of the pie and sacrificing the rest of us. Their greed, everyone's greed, will be our downfall. Because Americans no longer know how to be cohesive. So many Americans are so naive that they follow the poisonous examples of the children we call politicians. So many people behave so poorly on the internet. They act so immaturely. It's just amazing. So America, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, we're screwed. And so is Europe, because they have the same problems we have. Unless we can learn to act as a nation and set aside our own selfish desires, we're screwed. And since we have so many psychopaths and narcissists in our country, let alone in the other countries that China is targeting, yeah, unless they can be convinced that it's in their best interest not to go to bed with China, we're really in trouble, because some of them are the richest people on earth, and very powerful people too, that you don't even know about. So stick that in your pipe and smoke it, because change needs to happen, or change will be forced on us. We will become a subsidiary of China. Sorry. Not what I want. I don't want to be part of a communist nation. But it is pretty much inevitable at this point, and the politicians will not stop it. Thanks for watching, and hope you have a great day.